out so much money he was going to use, and he was losing. Finally had enough for maybe one more, and as he was watching his last horse lose, and he's sitting there debating, he watched a priest go down on the track and lay his hands on him. It looked like he prayed for a horse, and so he just sat there and watched, and the horse won. And he was, he's always skeptical of Catholics. He was Baptist, and so he waited, and the next race it happened again. And in a third race, whichever horse the priest went down and laid his hands on, won. So he's like getting excited. So the fourth race, the next race comes, and he watches the priest, and he goes down, and he picks out a horse, and he lays his hands on the head and prays, but then he lays his hands all over the horse. He goes, this has got to be a good one. So he goes down and he bets on it, and the horse falls over and dies halfway through the race. So he goes and he finds the priest, and he tells him what was going on. He said, what happened? He said, that's a problem with you Protestants. He said, you don't know the difference between blessing and last rites.
That's good.
He's the last rites.
I think I bigger laugh than I thought.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Into the horse track. Off track betting, gambling, and
Part of my discussion here today, I hopefully get a little discussion from you. And my subject for the Love Your Life workshop is to practice dropping the scale. And so I was thinking, first of all, how many of you have siblings or grew up with siblings? All right. Any of you the youngest? Anybody here the youngest? Okay. Anybody here the oldest? Oldest sibling? Yeah. Any others in the middle? How many? Yeah. They all have their own.
you don't sound happy about that.
Yeah.
Us middle children, we're messed up, I tell you what. But they each have their own good side and positive things. They each have their own challenges, whether you're the oldest, youngest, in the middle. And sometimes, no matter which position you're in, we sometimes grow up feeling like we got to measure up to somebody. You ever feel that way? Mm-hmm. Ever feel that way? Sometimes if you're a middle child, you're trying to emulate the older siblings, or feel like you got to measure up to them. Sometimes if you're the oldest, you feel like you got to measure up to your parents or your father or mother or whatever. And I think the youngest get off scot-free. They just are crazy and just go off do their own thing.
I don't think so. No. Not in my family.
But I was just wondering if any of you want to share anything. But have you ever spent any part of your life or affected any part of your life that you can recall or want to talk about where you felt like you were just trying to measure up to somebody else's expectations, even if they didn't know it? Anybody waste any years doing that?
Yeah. Oh, I wasted a lot of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always wanted to be like my dad, and the older I got and stuff, I was never going to be like my father.
Yeah.
And we did the same type of work and whatever, worked side by side for years, but I was never going to be the man he was because I was, you know what I mean? I wasn't him.
Yeah.
And see, until I got older, I didn't know that my little brother and my two sisters were like looking up to me. Because if I'd have known that, then I wouldn't have acted as childish as I did growing up. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't realize at that point that people looked up to their older brother, or it could be a sister.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I got older and started screwing up. My parents were like, "Look, you have your little brother and you have your sisters that are watching you." And I would say, "Why are you telling me this now?" You know what I mean? Because maybe I would have acted, probably not, but I could have told them I'd try to do better anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And trying to be like your dad, was there a point where you felt bad, like?
Well, I did for years.
Yeah. Okay.
for years I felt bad, you know. I mean, my mom told me, you know, your dad's a certain way, you're a certain way. I mean, just generationally wise, I could never be like my father. My dad was I mean, not a cold man, but a hard man. Didn't like, he wasn't too much like loving, emotional fella.
Right.
You know what I mean? Unless it got so bad. You know what I mean? I mean, there was time. I made my dad cry one time because I was in so much trouble. My dad was like, "I don't know what we're supposed to do with it. That I can't put you in the military, and they won't lock your butt up. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it." You know what I mean? My mom couldn't handle me. That's the reason why I ended up with my father. I was just totally out of hand. But like I said, there was no, even though I did what my dad did, my behavior outside of work wasn't like my father's. My dad had 4 kids, you know what I mean, that lived with 2 different, you know, in 2 different places. My sister lived with my mother and me and my little brother, which was really only my stepbrother, but I never went like that. He's my brother.
I think,
and we lived with our father.
yeah. I think so many, I don't know if it's as much for girls and their moms, but so many guys, you know, you do, whether they put the expectation on, you know, we live with expectations that we think or other people do have of us that for years we can feel like we're not measuring up, you know?
And I mean, and nobody told me that.
Yeah.
Why aren't you more like your father? Why can't you?
You just felt it.
I just felt that I needed to be like my father, especially after I had this little talk where you have your brothers and your sisters looking,
Yeah.
you know, looking upon you. They want to come to you for help. Well, if you need help, where are they going? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times your brothers and sisters not going to want to come to their mother or father because they got little things that they're doing that they don't want them to know about, but they just kind of want advice or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that I had all these people looking, you know,
Yeah.
like watching me.
That's good. Well,
I
it's not,
think, Dave, I think that, like the first one has a, is the first, excuse me, have a little more, pardon me, have a little more privileges, first privileges when they first, and in some cases, the older one have to take care of help take care of the other kids. In my case, it wasn't, and I got, like, neighbors would come along and the kids, and Mom would let me go visit with them, and then my sister was 2 years younger. Well, she would get and Mom wouldn't let her go, but she would get a stick or a rock or anything and lay it on me.
she wanted to be like you. She wanted to have what you had. Anybody else have, you know, kind of live with the expectations that you felt like you didn't fulfill?
I was next to the youngest out of 10, always got blamed for everything. Everything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not just trying to dredge up bad memories.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, yeah.
Well, yes, I am.
You know, while you're into it.
I think it was basically the opposite with me. I didn't really have a dad at home.
Yeah.
You know, I had a dad there, but he wasn't my real dad. But I grew up with a stepfather. But more so, it was my mom that I really looked up.
Okay.
She was something else. So that's who I really tried to emulate my life behind, how she did and what she would do in certain situations. I try to look at that and what she do to correct certain things. And so I really, she was a great role model in my life. My mom was a different.
Did you feel the need to kind of like protect her, or did you feel like being the oldest son, did you feel like you had a...
And I knew I had a little brother, and I always thought about, now, I don't like in Steve's situation, he was saying he didn't know that his siblings looked up to him. And it was just me and him, and so I always tried to be careful how I did, because I knew he was watching me. I knew how he, you know, I knew he'd be looking at somebody,
Yeah.
because we were around each other a lot, so I said, I gotta watch how I'm doing, because of how he, so I really tried to watch the thing like that, so.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, really, my mom's wife. She was something else.
You know, expectations aren't necessarily a bad thing in and of themselves. They can be, It can be. Or examples, role models. You know, maybe I should put it that way. Somebody that we can emulate, look up to.
Unless you're leaving yourself out of it. Like my older sister and I, she moved to Colorado and I moved a year after with her. And we always lived together, lived around each other. You know, we were best friends. We were always together. And she was, you know, she graduated from University of Delaware, physical therapist, was, you know, had her own practice. And I was just always, you know, just me. You know, I was just always the black sheep kind of kid. And it was, I tried to be like she would give me clothes and stuff, and there's a period in my life, even in pictures I can see, where I tried to be like her. I tried to wear clothes that she had, and I tried to be like her, and it just wasn't me, you know. I was the tomboy. I was the, you know, and so there was always a little part of me that was just not right, you know, until I came into my own self and realized, hey, I'm okay who I am, you know, I can be the best I am. But there was a period in my life where I tried to be so much like her that it took away from who I was, and it wasn't a good thing.
And in trying to be like her, was it so much that she wanted you to be like her, or you felt like you were supposed to?
I looked up to her. She was, you know, she had a lot of great qualities, and I really looked up to her, you know.
So the negative, the positive was she had a lot of great qualities. The negative was
I lost
you
myself
put
in it.
you put these expectations on yourself. Which is often the case. Often we think other people have expectations of us, or we try to emulate them in ways that are ways that we can't. And there's a lot of times it's expectations that we put on ourselves to be a certain way, or to live up to a certain standard, you know. And once again, expectations can be a helpful thing. It can give us goals, give us something to shoot for. But for most of us, I think, is that we have periods of our time, or maybe even today, where we're living with, you know, Linda, you said black sheep of the family. Is that because the rest of you, maybe they did. Did the rest of the family tell you that, or is that the way you felt?
No, they used to tell me they found me on the doorstep. So yeah, they joked about it, but you know, as a kid, you're never really sure.
Yeah. But sometimes we feel a certain way, and it's all in our minds. It's expectations that maybe we're not living up to our own expectations, or maybe we can't live up to, maybe we've messed up in some areas. That's life. You know, maybe I look and say, I wasn't the dad I wanted to be, or I could have done this different, I could have done that different, or in this relationship, or in this job, or in this situation, you know. That's true of the human race, pretty much. But we sometimes hold on to those, and it tends to define how we feel and how we operate. Even today, maybe. You know. And every one of us is unique in that. Your situation is unique. And there's positives in what you've taken away, and there's negatives in what you've taken away and you've done. But there's positives there too. You know, there's positives. You know, just to take your, you know, you've taken positive things from your sister and put positive things in your life. And she got them from somewhere else, and you got them from somewhere else, you know. Those are, but you also were creating negative expectations, you know, and you've learned to deal with that. I told you about my older brother. For years and years and years and years, I worried about every decision I made about what he might think about it, you know. Truth is, he didn't care. He was living his life, you know, usually hundreds of miles away. He was assuming I was living my life, you know. And yet, because he's the older sibling, you know, for years and years and years, I thought, I wonder what my brother will, if he'll approve of this decision, you know. I've heard stories of people with deceased parents still having a hold over what they do and feeling like they haven't lived up to their deceased father's expectations. You know, and it's really something that we hold on to. So whatever your story is, and I know we each have a lot more stories than we even have time.
They was one family lived in the area, and they had 3 or 4 kids. But when he went to the store, of course, the store wasn't very far away, but he had a stroller. The big boy was in the stroller, and the smaller kid was walking. And somebody asked him, he said, why don't you let the older boy walk and put the smaller? He said, oh no, he'll first to come.
Huh.
He was the first boy. He was the first one born. And he
Interesting.
He got to ride. That smaller kid was,
Get out.
Yeah,
Huh. Oh, yeah, that is interesting.
that's funny. Wonder how they grew up.
I was gonna say, that boy grew up with a big head. He thought he was all that.
Then he got married.
That's right, that's right. That's right. And she got the stroller.
I don't know.
The stroller broke down.
Okay, now I want you to listen to these words in light of whatever expectations you've ever felt like you were living under. Listen to these words of Paul. He said, by grace you've been saved. Those are the words of Paul. He said, by grace you've been saved. Not by living up to expectations, but by grace you've been saved. Or as John said, God loved the world so much that he gave his son. He loved the world even while we were not living up to expectation. He loved us so much he gave his son. By grace you've been saved. And I've read this poem before, but I love this poem. I forget which author. It says, look what happens to the scale when love holds it. It stops working. Look what happens to the scale when love holds it. The scale stops working. And if we've been living with a scale, if we've been getting up every day with a scale, we've been carrying a scale in our minds that says, not many of us like standing on a scale.
No.
You know, not many of us like standing on a scale. And when it comes to our character and our worth as a human being, none of us like standing on a scale. And the ones who do have a different problem. Okay, we'll talk about pride another time. You know, but when we live with the scale, and sometimes we live with the scale our whole lives, it says, I don't measure up. I don't measure up.